Welcome back to Transfer Talk. We can speak live now to our South American football expert, Tim Vickery, who is in Rio de Janeiro for us. Tim, great to see you once again. Manuel Ugarte, we've talked about him for most of this window. It looks now that Manchester United are going to get their man.
It does, yeah. This is what we always expected at the end of a kind of transfer window poker, that he would end up at Old Trafford. Just as an aside, you wonder where this leaves André, the Fluminense central midfielder, who was linked with Liverpool last year, and Fulham pulled out last week. We understood that he was plan B if United couldn't land Ugarte. Could be some late interest here from Nottingham Forest, who've obviously lost Danilo to a serious injury. Because André is a terrific central midfielder, recalled by Brazil, may well start next month in World Cup qualification. But Uruguay's Manuel Ugarte, yes, it looks like he's ended up where we always expected him to be, at Old Trafford. And
when you look at his style of play, he's obviously a combative midfielder. He gets around the pitch very well. Does he become a fan's favourite because of his style of play?
Yeah, I think superstar would be laying it on far too thick. I mean, I don't think he would see himself in that mould. It's before the time of most of you fine gentlemen, but a little bit like Charlie Watts drumming for the Rolling Stones. Let Jagger and Richards prance around and get all the plaudits while you hold the fort behind. But I think it's such a good fit, because we saw through last season, and especially in that curtain raiser against Fulham, that hole in the centre of the United midfield, how easy they were to play through. He is the man, I think, to fill that hole. And what a start he could have if United decide they can get this done. They decide to throw him in the deep end, because there aren't many more rivalries fiercer in England than Manchester United at home to Liverpool. And with Liverpool looking so deadly on the transition, that could really be a welcome to the Premier League, Manuel Ugarte.
Hi Tim, good to talk to you. Forest looking at a striker. Who are they looking at?
Well, they've looked at a number, but one that they've had a bid knocked back for is Pedro of Flamengo here in Rio. Now, he's a Brazil international. He's in the Brazil squad. They took him to the World Cup, although they didn't get a lot out of him. Now, Flamengo have knocked back this bid. It was something like 20 million euros. Flamengo value the player much, much higher, although he is 27. He had a go with Fiorentina a few years back, who gave up on him more or less instantaneously. But he's an absolute idol here. I would love to see it happen, because he's a player that intrigues me. He's technically brilliant. He's wonderful in the penalty area, but he's not quick, and he's not great back to goal. And outside the penalty area, he doesn't offer a great deal. So this could well be a player who's more suited to playing with a big club in Brazil, where the defensive lines are deeper and that the game is happening more in the opposing penalty area. He may lack the kind of mobility that a club like Forest would need from a striker. But as I say, I think this is very, very unlikely to happen unless Forest significantly up their bid.
Hello, Tim. I just wanted to ask you about someone Southampton have opened talks with in terms of Corinthians striker Yuri Alberto. Tell us some more about him. How close to the move do you think we are? And he was previously linked with Wolves in January, wasn't he?
Yeah, he's already had a go in Europe and did well with Zenit a couple of years ago. Started very, very well. Ended up moving back because of the military situation there, the war. But he's already shown a capacity to adapt to European football. He's been a little bit up and down in his career, Yuri Alberto. 23, he's had 5 minutes off the bench for Brazil in a friendly last year. Quick centre forward. He can play wide, but what he wants to do is play on the shoulder of the last defender. Quick, mobile striker, very good at getting in behind the line. As I understand it, he wants to move. The stalling point at the moment is Corinthians trying to make this a loan move with an obligation to buy. But the position of Corinthians is not particularly strong. They're in bad financial straits. So I think Southampton have considerable wiggle room to get this one over the line. They're already doing business in Brazil. They're losing Carlos Alcaraz, the central midfielder who was on loan at Juventus last season. He's coming here to Rio, to Flamengo, with the central midfielder Victor Hugo moving in the opposite direction, although I think Southampton will loan him to Turkey first. So Yuri Alberto, you can see the fit, mobile striker, likes to operate behind the line, and it seems at the moment there's a good chance that this might happen.
Tim, Brighton, not for the first time looking at buying from the South American market. Who are they interested in?
A Paraguayan central midfielder called Diego Gomez, who's currently playing with Messi in Inter Miami in Major League Soccer. Imperious young central midfielder, tall, strong, works box to box. You can play him further forward. He's got a crashing shot on him. Last seen in Paraguay's pretty good Olympic campaign. It looks like this one is well on the way. There are doubts, though, about whether it's going to happen now or in the January transfer window. And if it's the latter, we have the chance to talk about him all over again in a few months' time.
And I'm sure we will as well. And overall, Tim, I just want to get your thoughts on the window as a whole. Who has been your standout move this window? Who do you think is going to be the breakout star this summer with just a couple of days to go in the window?
Yeah, a couple of trends have interested me. One, which I'm sure has flown under your radar screen, is young South American talent going straight to Saudi Arabia. When Wesley, Corinthians winger, was linked over the window with a number of Premier League clubs, he's going to Saudi Arabia. Trained in the Premier League, more players, we've seen this over recent years, more players coming straight in from South America, especially from Brazil. But the move that I think really stands out is Savinho to Manchester City. Now, Brazil, since 1992, this for people of my age is an astonishing statistic. Since 1992, Brazil have now produced the 6th most players to have played in the Premier League. But I still don't think there's been a real, genuine, out-and-out Brazilian superstar. Quite often, that type of player has been lured to Real Madrid or Barcelona. Savinho could be the one. Very promising start with Manchester City. So that's the move, I think, that interests me most in what we've seen so far over the transfer window. Savinho to Manchester City.
Yeah, he certainly looks very, very exciting. Tim, thanks so much, and thank you for the window. We absolutely love having you on, so thanks again.
Right, it's time to go round the clubs. 2 days to go. Dharmesh, take it away.
Thank you very much, Michael. Reece Nelson could be one to watch in the final hours, with a number of clubs interested in signing the Arsenal forward.
Chelsea could turn back to Aston Villa striker John Duran as their search for a striker continues.
Bournemouth are hoping to complete a loan move for Kepa Arrizabalaga before tomorrow's deadline.
Well, Brentford have signed winger Gustavo Nunez from Gremio for £10 million. Still no progress on Ivan Toney.
That's Friday's deadline, by the way. Correction. New Brighton signing Matt O'Reilly to have a scan on the injury he sustained just 6 minutes into his debut last night.
But it's no guarantee Raheem Sterling will leave before the deadline. Chelsea trying to agree a deal with interested clubs which could be put in front of Sterling and his advisors.
Crystal Palace have agreed a deal with Wolfsburg for Maxence Lacroix, worth an initial £18 million.
Well, Neil Maupay is expected to leave Everton before Friday's transfer deadline. Marseille and 2 Premier League clubs are interested.
Fulham are in the market for a winger. That's before deadline day.
Talks continue between Ipswich and Chelsea over the signing of striker Armando Broja.
Leicester City are working hard to add to their attacking options before Friday, but are limited financially.
Liverpool have agreed a deal with Juventus for Federico Chiesa. The deal is worth £12.5 million.
Manchester City right-back Issa Kabore is on the verge of completing a season-long loan move to Benfica.
Manuel Ugarte has been having a medical at Manchester United ahead of his move from PSG.
Sky in Germany are reporting Newcastle are interested in RB Leipzig defender Mohamed Simikan.
Well, after move for Eddie Nketiah fell through and Brentford rejected their offer for Johan Wissa, Nottingham Forest is still trying to sign a striker before Friday's deadline.
Southampton remain in discussions with Arsenal over the potential signing of Aaron Ramsdale, but there's still a gap in the obligation fee.
Well, as it stands at Tottenham, the focus is outgoings to Giovanni Lo Celso, and Sergio Reguilon could leave before Friday's deadline.
West Ham United still working on a deal for PSG midfielder Carlos Soler, and the final hours could see a few players leave.
Wolves have agreed a fee of £10 million with Crystal Palace for Sam Johnston. Negotiations continue, but the deal is getting closer.
It's fair to say there's been plenty of changes to the procedure. We're going to do our best, or at least these two are, to try and explain the process now. As he said, tomorrow, the draw in Monaco. How's it going to look?
Well, I think the big element that we've got to remember, Rob, is that we've gone from this traditional group phase to a league phase, so 36 teams. And we've mentioned here that a computer is going to be involved in making this draw because it gets quite complicated. OK, so 36 teams get split into 4 pots And that's based on their UEFA club coefficient, which is basically their historical performance in Europe, how well they've done previously. So those clubs will be drawn out of a hat. One of them will be drawn out of pot one, and then a computer will then decide who they will play in their 8 league fixtures. So you play 4 teams at home, 4 teams away. Different teams every time. It's not home and away like previously. We have to get used to this new format now. And each team will play 2 teams from each of the 4 pots, 1 home and 1 away. This idea that you play strong teams straight away. So we see good, high quality matches straight from the off, and also even quality matches right through the competition. You cannot face teams from the same nation at this stage, and you can only face a maximum of 2 teams from one country at this stage of the competition as well. And when you start looking through all those details, you understand why they've handed it over to the algorithm to sort out.
What could possibly go wrong tomorrow? I can't think. Let's talk about where is it? 3rd point, 4th point. 4 home games, Dougie, and 4 away games. So my maths isn't great, but that's 2 more group games than last year for everyone involved in the Champions League. I can cast my mind forward to complaints about fixture pile-up. I suppose fans, particularly I would say Villa fans, will like it because they're in the Champions League for the first time in forever and 8 matches, but there will be complaints about the amount of games that players are playing.
Yeah, absolutely. There will be more games, of course, and there is the potential that you might get some more interesting fixtures because a lot of new teams qualified for the Champions League. Not just Aston Villa, but Bologna are in the Champions League for the first time since the mid-60s. Stuttgart for the first time since 2009-10. Everyone's keen to see how Bayer Leverkusen translate that form to the Champions League, still unbeaten in over 40 games in domestic competition, of course, after a great start to the season for Xabi Alonso's men. There's also Girona, who were in the Segunda Division 3 years ago, competing in the Champions League. So there's a lot of underdog stories in this year's competition, along with the big dogs of Real Madrid, Barcelona, Bayern Munich, Inter Milan, etc. So it should be an intriguing draw, if it works.
Sure it will. That's the Champions League. What about the Europa League then?
Yeah, it's copy and paste job really, Rob, because
saved us a bit of time.
Yeah, Europa League, again, going to this 36-team league format. And once again, the computer is brought in to solve these fixture issues where teams can't play teams from the same country and they can only face 2 teams from other countries at this stage. And once again, we have this situation where you play 4 at home, 4 away against different teams from different pots. Just a little note, Rob, about that, expected to last around 35 minutes, because we know that these draws can drag on. But,
do they ever?
Well, when they did a rehearsal with humans doing this draw, it took over 3 hours.
Oh,
so
wow.
Maybe 35 minutes. Count your blessings that we've only got 35 minutes tomorrow.
Well, Vicky Gummas was on doing the draw tomorrow. She's due to be 5 till 7. It might be 5 till 10 if it takes 3 hours. Let's talk about the Europa League then with the English representatives, which are Manchester United and Tottenham. Who do you think they might or could come up against?
Well, again, there's some games to fear. Athletic Club with Nico Williams, one of the stars of Euro 2024, of course, in the summer. They've not started the season in the best of form, but Nico Williams will be expecting to make a big impact given how well he played at the Euros. There's Fenerbahce and Galatasaray, never an easy away draw. Olympiacos won the Conference League last year, beating Aston Villa on the way, beating Fiorentina in the final. There's Roma, there's Lazio. Roma won the Conference League a few years ago, Europa League semi-finalists the next year. So there is a lot of quality in this draw, and there's still so many games to be decided prior to the draw happening as well. So it's going to be an absolutely fascinating competition once again.
Right, Conference League.
Yeah, slightly different. Slightly different for the Conference League. If Chelsea will beat Servette across these 2 legs and get through into this competition, this is what they're going to face. Again, we've got 36 teams, but they're going to be split into 6 pots, again, based on their club coefficient, their historic performance in Europe. And slightly fewer games for teams in this competition. They play 6 league fixtures, 3 home, 3 away. This competition actually wraps up in December. The other 2 go into January. So, slightly earlier finish for this one, but those caveats below are tweaked slightly. So each team will play 1 team from each of those 6 pots. You can't face teams from the same nation in this phase of the competition like the other competitions, and you can only face a maximum of 2 teams from one country in the league phase of the Conference League.
I want to throw a hospital pass. It's not been written down, but do you know the pots for the English clubs?
Not yet.
Not off the top of my head.
All of them. Okay. I know City are 1 and Villa are 4, and I'm assuming Chelsea will be 1 in that. Let's talk about the potential then for the English clubs in terms of going the distance this year.
Well, it's Chelsea, and we've been talking about their squad depth and what they'd expect from this season. They'll want to re-establish themselves at the sharp end of European football. And yes, it's the Conference League, but since winning the Champions League in 2021, they've had 2 quarter-final exits in the Champions League. Of course, didn't play in it last year after a poor performance in the league the year before. And this is a great opportunity for the likes of Dewsbury Hall to get some game time in this competition. Maybe Axel Disasi, Badia Shiel as well. Maybe João Felix will really announce himself in a Chelsea shirt after that slightly tricky loan spell the year before last as well. So Chelsea will be hoping for big things from this competition. They've certainly got the squad depth to make a real dent in it.
And just finally, European competitions affect the EFL Cup this year. Why?
They do. So we've got the Carabao Cup draw tonight after the final round of second round games tonight. Now the third round of the Carabao Cup clashes with the first games of the Champions League and the Europa League fixtures. So those Champions League and Europa League teams who've qualified for those competitions will not face each other in the Carabao Cup draw. So they'll be kept apart in the Carabao Cup draw. Chelsea, if they do get through against Servette, they will be in the Carabao Cup draw. In the open draw, they could play anyone because the Conference League starts in October after the Carabao Cup third round ties have been played.
A surprising twist could be on the horizon for Manchester United following Manuel Ugarte's transfer. Manuel Ugarte has arrived in Manchester to finalise his transfer to Manchester United, a move that is expected to be a smart addition to the squad. Sir Alex Ferguson once referred to player complacency as a disease in 2016, recognising the critical role competition plays in driving performance. The impending arrival of Ugarte from Paris Saint-Germain could be the catalyst to reignite the competitive spark within the United locker room, particularly for Casemiro. Casemiro delivered an outstanding first season at United but struggled in his second year. Ugarte, a dynamic defensive midfielder known for his ability to recover and intercept balls, is expected to slot in ahead of the defense, with Kobbie Mainoo and Bruno Fernandes supporting him in more advanced roles. United invested €50 million, £42.3 million, with an additional €10 million, £8.5 million, in add-ons, to secure Ugarte, who arrived in Manchester on Tuesday for his medicals and to complete the transfer. Fresh legs were desperately needed in United's midfield, and the club believes their patient approach during this summer's transfer window paid off. The signing of Ugarte, though late, is seen as a significant boost, and he is anticipated to be available for selection against Liverpool on Sunday. Casemiro, who started the season's opening matches against Fulham and Brighton, now faces a fight to retain his starting spot. Casemiro's decline last season wasn't simply due to complacency. He appeared to be a player struggling with the natural wear of a long and successful career, which was difficult to watch. However, Ugarte's arrival might provide the spark Casemiro needs to rediscover his best form. While the 2022-23 version of Casemiro may never fully return, Ugarte's presence could push the 32-year-old to elevate his game. After all, he won't want to spend his time on the bench. Casemiro has had a glittering career, winning every major club trophy, and the prospect of being benched this season will undoubtedly fuel his determination. This scenario is exactly what Erik Ten Hag desires. He would be concerned if a player wasn't bothered by being named as a substitute. Casemiro should channel any frustration into better performances, and the anticipated competition with Ugarte can only be positive for United. Of course, it's possible that Casemiro and Ugarte could play together, but that might come at the expense of the impressive Mainoo, who deserves to be one of the first names on the team sheet. A senior source at United acknowledged that Ten Hag was forced to overplay Mainoo last season. The young midfielder was asked to shoulder too much responsibility after returning from an ankle injury, and while he could benefit from being rotated in certain matches, he should still start most Premier League games. Fernandes, the captain, is obviously not going to be rested. He remains the most influential player in the squad and has been the most consistent performer since his arrival in January 2020. Although Casemiro seemed off-pace during pre-season, there have been encouraging signs of a return to form in recent weeks, particularly in his ability to impact critical moments in midfield. Casemiro has shown an uncanny knack for being in the right place during set pieces and has been involved in intricate play around the box. However, questions remain about the defensive cover he provides, which is ultimately his primary responsibility. The upcoming battle between Ugarte and Casemiro for a place in the starting lineup will be fascinating to watch. It will be intriguing to see how Ten Hag manages their playing time throughout the season. Ultimately, it seems likely that Ugarte could end up with more appearances as the campaign progresses, shaking up the midfield in the process.